Tonight, the results of my eight-week investigation into the shredding controversy involving the Springfield Police Department.
Documents show certain internal affairs files were destroyed earlier than the original union contract called for.
One of those files destroyed was Deputy Chief Cliff Buscher's, even though it was the subject of a Freedom of Information Act request. And that made us wonder, what was in that file that was destroyed by the SPD? Here's part one of our special series, Ready, Set, Shred. On April 25th, the Springfield Police Department signed an agreement with its police union, reducing the amount of time before certain disciplinary documents could be destroyed from 5 to 4 years. That contract change allowed for the immediate destruction of more than 30 internal affairs files, including Deputy Chief Cliff Buscher's. Nearly 2 weeks before his file was destroyed, this Freedom of Information Act request was filed with the city asking for his internal affairs file. Specifically, the request asked for information concerning an incident involving Deputy Chief Buscher that took place at this Missouri resort in 2008. The same day that Buscher's file was destroyed, the man who filed that FOIA request was sent this letter from the city telling him simply, "The Springfield Police Department has no documents responsive to your request." According to these documents we obtained from the Taney County, Missouri Prosecutor's Office, Buscher, who was a commander in 2008, was charged with a felony, unlawful use of a weapon while intoxicated. The charge stated that Buscher fired his department-issued gun several times over this lake. The Taney County prosecutor confirms that he plea bargained the charge down to a disturbing the peace, a misdemeanor. The Taney County prosecutor also says Buscher pleaded guilty to the charge and admitted he was intoxicated when he fired his gun. According to this internal affairs document obtained by NewsChannel 20 on July 14, 2008, Buscher was suspended for 30 days and demoted from commander to lieutenant. But there is much more that is alleged to have happened that night 5 years ago at this Missouri lodge that has never before been made public. And it's all contained in these internal affairs documents surrounding the investigation. According to the documents obtained exclusively by NewsChannel 20, for 12 years, 4 Springfield police buddies and their sons gathered at this Missouri resort for a father-son get-together. In 2008, the 4 cops included Cliff Buscher, who was then a commander, Lieutenant Wendell Kurt Banks, Lieutenant Greg Williamson, his brother, former Deputy Chief Doug Williamson, and 10 kids, including their sons and their friends. We obtained one audio recording of the internal affairs interview of former Deputy Chief Doug Williamson and the transcripts from the recorded interviews with Lieutenant Kurt Banks, Jake Joslin, who was at 15 years old at the time, and Cliff Buscher about what they stated happened the night of Saturday, March 22, 2008. All of the documents show it all begins at this restaurant and bar called the Frosted Mug, where the group went that night. Statements show the kids had pizza and soda. Lieutenant Banks states that the adults drank beer and 1 round of tequila shots. Lieutenant Kurt Banks tells Internal Affairs, quote, "Buscher was definitely intoxicated. That's why I wouldn't let him drive." Statements made by Lieutenant Banks, former Deputy Chief Williamson, and Jake Joslin show the trouble starts when a woman in the bar is offended by a statement on a T-shirt that Cliff Buscher's young son is wearing. Former Deputy Chief Williamson says the woman confronts Commander Buscher about the T-shirt. This is the audio recording during Williamson's internal affairs interview concerning that argument.
They had a couple of words back and forth, so I turned around, and at that point, Cliff seems a little more agitated.
Jake Joslin stated in his interview that, quote, "This woman and Cliff were fighting with words at each other because the woman didn't appreciate what his son was wearing as a shirt, and he was firing back too." Joslin continues, and then Doug Williamson had to hold her back because, Cliff was saying he was going to hurt her or something. He didn't mean it, though. Internal Affairs asked Joslin, "Do you remember what he might have said, though?" Joslin replies, "I'm going to hit that B." Internal Affairs, "Okay, was it loud?" Joslin replies, "No, room voice." Lieutenant Banks stated the argument was loud, so he gathered up the kids and Commander Buscher, and they left the bar. Most of the kids got into a van. 2 other kids climbed into a pickup truck with Commander Buscher and Lieutenant Banks and headed back to the resort. All of the statements show former Deputy Chief Doug Williamson and his brother, Lieutenant Greg Williamson, stayed at the bar. When talking to internal affairs investigators, former Deputy Chief Williamson said his son told him what took place in the truck with Commander Buscher.
As Mr. Buscher was rummaging through the glove box, and he goes, "Dad, I thought he was looking for a mint," but he pulled the gun out, unholstered it, and said, "Who's in charge now?"
About that, Commander Buscher told internal affairs investigators, quote, "One of the kids said that that when we were in the parking lot, that I reached down and pulled it out and said something about showing somebody who's boss. I don't recall doing that. It's possible I did. I don't recall doing it. Lieutenant Banks told Internal Affairs he tried to get Commander Busher to give him the gun. Quote, I tried to convince him to put the gun away, that, he was just being stupid. He didn't do it. He kept the gun out. When asked by Internal Affairs investigators if he remembers Lieutenant Banks asking him to give him the gun, Commander Busher responds, no. According to the statements from Jake Joslin and Lieutenant Banks, shortly after arriving at the resort, both say they heard a gunshot. Both say Commander Busher fired a shot into the ground outside the main cabin. Documents show Commander Busher admitted to Internal Affairs that he shot at the ground to, quote, have a little fun with the kids. He continues, I fired a couple of rounds into the ground just to kind of scare them, get their attention. It did. According to statements made by Lieutenant Banks and Jake Joslin, the kids began screaming and running. Some kids popped the screen out of windows to escape the cabin. Both Commander Busher and Jake Joslin tell investigators that after initially being scared, the kids begin to laugh about the incident. But Lieutenant Banks didn't think it was funny. He tells investigators that he demanded Commander Busher give him the gun. Quote, after a brief argument, just trying to get the gun from Cliff, it was pretty obvious he wasn't going to give it to me. He just kept wanting to go back to the bar. I kept telling him no. Lieutenant Banks says Commander Busher is growing more angry, saying the woman he argued with in the bar was, quote, very disrespectful to him, and that she can't treat me like that. Former Deputy Chief Doug Williamson told investigators Lieutenant Banks told him this.
Cliff wanted to go back to town and in Cliff's words, kill the
Internal Affairs investigators did not ask Commander Busher about that. At this point, Lieutenant Banks tells investigators that Commander Busher went onto the back porch and started firing shots toward the lake. In his statement to Internal Affairs investigators, Busher admits he stood on the porch of the cabin and shot into the bank of the lake. Again, statements from Busher and Joslin show that after initially being scared, the kids started laughing about it. This is what happens next, according to Jake Joslin. He says that Commander Busher approached him with his gun pointed at the ground. Joslin says Busher said to him in a joking manner, quote, you want to lose that leg, mother expletive? Both Lieutenant Banks and former Deputy Chief Doug Williamson said Joslin told him that Commander Busher made that statement. When asked by investigators if he remembered saying that to Joslin, Commander Busher said no. When asked if he threatened anyone with a weapon, Commander Busher again responded, no. At this point, Lieutenant Banks tells investigators that he sent the kids to another cabin and then drove back to the bar to get the Williamson brothers. On the way back to the cabins, Lieutenant Banks says he told them what Commander Busher had done. As the three officers arrive at the cabin, former Deputy Chief Doug Williamson states that this is what he saw.
My memory is that there were kids hiding on the corners of the other cabins and behind trees.
Entering the main cabin, former Deputy Chief Doug Williamson says he sees his brother Greg talking to Commander Busher. Fearing Busher is still armed, Deputy Chief Doug Williamson says he tackled the men.
I'm upset at this time. I'm telling him that I'm calling the police. I'm telling him he's going to jail. Telling him that I would file an IA complaint against him, and I'm laying it all out.
According to Commander Busher's statement to investigators, he's taken and placed in another cabin alone and told to stay there. The statements from Lieutenant Banks and former Deputy Chief Doug Williamson show they questioned the kids about what happened. Then statements show the officers decide to call the Taney County Sheriff's Department. 122. After an investigation, the deputies take Commander Busher to the Sheriff's Department, where he is booked and jailed. This report NewsChannel 20 obtained from the Taney County Sheriff's Department show Lieutenant Banks and Jake Joslin wrote brief statements about the events at the cabin. Lieutenant Banks' statement leaves out most everything later that he told Internal Affairs. And Joslin's statement mentions nothing about the statement he later made to Internal Affairs about Commander Busher approaching him with his gun in hand, pointed at the ground, and saying in a joking manner, quote, you want to lose that leg, mother expletive. Lieutenant Banks refused to be interviewed for this story. Jake Joslin refused my request to be interviewed as well. Back in Springfield, Busher is demoted from commander to lieutenant and suspended for 30 days, according to this Internal Affairs document. He declined repeated requests for an interview. Former Deputy Chief Doug Williamson, who's now retired, says he was suspended for 1 day because he used foul language around the children. In 2009, Assistant Chief Robert Williams was named Springfield's top cop. As chief, Williams promoted Busher from lieutenant over the rank of commander to deputy chief.
even though Chief Williams likely knew most, if not all, of the details in Busher's file regarding the Missouri incident. That's because several of the internal affairs reports show that as assistant chief, Williams took part in some of those interviews, even questioning Busher during his. Chief Williams also declined to be interviewed for this story, citing ongoing litigation.
That litigation is a lawsuit filed by Calvin Christian against the city over the destruction of Deputy Chief Busher's internal affairs file that Christian asked for in his Freedom of Information Act request. My exclusive investigation continues tomorrow night at 10. And if you'd like to see the story again or view any of the supporting documentation, just go to our website at wics.com and click on Ready, Set, Shred in the Hot Topics bar.
We'll be right back.